Yep. All right. So we're live. We can do this.
All right.
I
Yep.
just
All right. So we're live. We can do this. All right.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
Done
All right. So
something.
we're
I've done
live.
nukes. There we go.
I've done it.
Yeah, I was had the stream running somewhere else, and it was doing its thing. So I've got Astartes just playing on a loop with no sound in the background. So that's what they're looking at while we're talking. Which I don't hate that, and they shouldn't either, because Astartes was a masterwork, piece of art. It's beautiful, but done by that one guy. I'm gonna have the link in the description. Beautiful.
Phenomenal, yeah.
All right, but I am Monsieur Senor Gordo. This is my co-host Lucis. Lucis, say hi.
Hello.
All right, that's enough. Just let him off the leash. Runs wild. And then so we're joined today by Alan. Do you want me to tell your Discord stuff, or does it matter?
Yeah, go ahead.
We got Alan, aka Last Shadow G18. I don't know if that's a reference or something, maybe cult related. We've got George, aka Discord Strom. So we're joined here, a couple GM/players. Nobody GMs and doesn't play, or you get forced to GM forever. But I've rarely seen that where somebody's GM'd for their entire time and has never played, but that's very rare. But
it's like a fucking.
That was almost me for 10 years.
Oh Lord,
Christ, bro! This is the curse of Atlas, man. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well,
Yeah,
you've made it to the promised land. You've begun to play then.
Yeah.
First year college, my friend's like, "Hey, have you heard this D&D game?" And then I was like, "Well, college is too expensive." And then my friend's like, "Hey, we play too, but we need a GM. I guess I'll do it."
College is too expensive. Let me escape to the netherworlds of
Yeah.
D&D. All right. So we're just gonna be yakking today and getting different perspectives on how other GMs and players run stuff. And Lucis, like you're relatively like new to GMing for 40K. You've run a lot of D&D before though?
A whole lot of D&D. I started playing D&D when I was 6 with my dad. So done that for a long time. Started 40K stuff like 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, so you've been getting some experience in it, and I think George, you're pretty much in the same boat, right? You've got a lot of D&D GM and player experience, but it just a little bit of 40K GMing, right? Or was it just playing?
I haven't GM'd any 40K, but I've GM'd some D100 systems, dice pool systems, D6 systems. I like looking around at different RPGs and seeing how they tick.
Fair enough. And Alan, what's yours at? Have you done the D&D before, or is it just mostly just 40K?
I'm actually in the complete reverse boat. So I started out on all the old Fantasy Flight systems at like 12, 13 with a bunch of my friends. And then only recently, until I got to college, is when I started playing D&D. So I've had to learn everything about 5e and Pathfinder 2nd edition in like the span of a year.
Well, that shouldn't be too hard to you. If you figured out the Fantasy Flight games, you should have a PhD in mathematics. Those are the most complicated character creation rules I've ever seen.
Dude, I say what you will, man, but like it's like deciphering fucking Sanskrit, dude. Like once you know how to read it, like it's just you can get broken fast.
Yeah, but then you talk to people who are used to D&D, and they think you're speaking gibberish.
Yeah, it's like I might as well be fucking like talking in Greek.
Yeah, and I mean, there's already a divide between even old D&D players and the new ones. Like 5e compared to 3.5 is just
3.5, my baby.
I see you're one of those.
That's what I grew up on. That was the first system I ever played in a tabletop RPG. Like,
it's a good one.
It is
my favorite.
Never played.
All right, well, I'm gonna kick it off with we're gonna keep it simple for the first couple of questions. So the one I wanted to know, primarily just asking everybody as a GM and a player, from both perspectives, is there such a thing as too many players in a party? Or
absolutely,
is there also such a thing as not enough players?
I think
here, we'll go with Alan first. Yeah, Alan, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna absolutely agree with too many, because there comes a time when you can only handle so much character development. Like where I come from, in my perspective, I'm very big on giving, like, you have your main arc, and then each individual character has their own arc where like they seek to grow, and like it doesn't include the party, or the party can help them, or so on and so forth. And that's really big for me. And if you have too many people, that gets way too much to handle on your own. Now, as for too little players, it can vary. If I'm introducing somebody to the setting, like if I'm running a one shot and I'm like, "Hey guys, like come check out this, crazy fantastic universe where fucking demons are inside your head and anybody who uses magic is going to get stabbed by a guy wearing plate armor." Like, you know, I'd say it if I'm introducing somebody to the setting, I don't want to overburden them with too many people to keep track of, but like I'm not going to DM for like two people. So,
And so, so in your opinion, what's the magic number? So, including you, so one GM to how many players is the magic number in your opinion?
I would say that one competent game master could reliably give 4 to 5 players the time of their lives.
Gotcha. All right, and so George, what's your opinion on the whole thing? So like, what are you thinking of? Too many players or not enough players? What's your thought?
So, I have the experience of learning how to GM and perfecting my GM skills with an average group size of around 8 to 10. And so I have learned that anything above 6 is an awful nightmare and you should never do it. It doesn't matter if the players are good, if they're all invested, if they're having a good time. When one round of combat takes 40 minutes, that's a problem.
Yeah, I can definitely slow the pace down, and yeah,
Jesus.
definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, I think 4 to 5 is the sweet spot. Like I've run games for 2 people, 3 people. 4 people seems to have the most enjoyment to time spent ratio I've found. But I wouldn't mind running a game for one person if I thought they were a really good role player and they could really get into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, so Lucis, same thing. What's your thought on it, man?
Well, I mean, we're going down the list of people talking. I see you next on my list.
I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna wrap everyone's stuff together and then give my opinion. Why don't you
right.
you co-host?
Hey. Okay,
answer.
All right, let me get back in my lane real quick. So the least amount of people I've ever even DM'd for was 2, and they were my brothers, and like we've all been doing it for a really long time, so I know they're like pretty good role players when they get into it. So like that went decently well. One person, I don't think I could ever role play with just one person. Like at that point you're just like sitting in a room talking back and forth like no
dice.
Yeah, like throwing dice around. Like it doesn't feel like a party of people to me. As for the maximum number, I mean, like if you have considerate people who are engaged, you could probably get like 6 or 7. But I think anything over like, so I'd go one more than George. Like anything over 7, yeah, complete fucking nightmare. Because I mean, the game that you're in with me right now, Gordo, is 7 people.
Yeah,
and I think it goes relatively well. Like nobody really talks over one another.
It's not the talking over that's the problem. It's the wandering off. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's everybody
split in a group,
scattering all over the place. But
I also find that people have a hard time focusing on the game if there's a too large of a group, and that bogs things down.
Yeah, if you're not able to bounce, like, I mean, it's the same thing as in any movie. If you can't get the camera on the character, they're gonna end up forgetting that character. you got to bounce back and forth and give everybody, an equal amount of time and keep them engaged. So yeah, if it's larger groups and they start Scooby-Dooing the situation, splitting up, it can drag, and there could be people sitting there for an hour and a half not doing nothing.
Which we've had to deal with 2 sessions in a row now. People kind of just like scattering like cockroaches all over the place.
Yeah.
But I think now that somebody's almost dead, they've learned their lesson.
You'd be very surprised.
Yeah, that's always the hope, but it's not always the result.
Like,
My opinion on it is that a lot of this stuff it boils down to like, your personal preference and stuff, but I always keep this golden rule in my head is that as long as everybody's having fun, and that includes the GM, because some people forget that, is that if you're not having fun doing it, you shouldn't be doing it. I've met people, friends of mine who they're not having fun because they have like problem players, or they just really aren't that, they just can't run that many players, and they don't want to say no to anyone. And I had a friend who was getting kept awake at night from stress dreams of it, and I'm like, that's not what it's for. I was like, you gotta step back. But yeah, in my opinion, I mean, I've done one-on-ones before. I've done, up to 10, 12 people. My magic numbers anywhere between 4 and 6 most of the time, but sometimes you do those one-on-one or just 2 players. Yeah, it is quick. You do need to have a lot prepared because they'll literally just blow through everything. They don't have a whole party slowing them down. They make all the decisions. But sometimes it can bring out a lot of really good roleplay moments. And essentially you're basically telling a story to this person, kind of old school, like how freaking settlers and shit used to do in all of our family histories, just sitting down by the fire and telling this story that you're making up to this person to entertain them, but they're giving stuff back for you to work with. So sometimes it can be really great, but you got to kind of be on the same wavelength with that person. You got to know what you want and know what you're getting into, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's it's a really good way to sum everything up. I'd say, like, at the end of the day, the golden rule of, having fun applies to everybody. And I mean, if you can do what you can do with all those people without getting too stressed out, then fucking send it.
Well,
I like that.
I'd like to backtrack to you saying, you shouldn't be miserable as a GM. Are you trying to say you shouldn't be a martyr for your players?
No, it's even if everybody's having a blast, if something's happening where you're just not having a good time, you're stressed out about it, and you just can't figure out how to fix it, you should step away. Whether that be personal stuff. I've seen people who they just have personal issues. People dying in their family, or they're just like depressed or something, and they're continuing to just struggle through this game because everybody else is having fun. I'm like, in those moments, put it on hold. Go take care of your personal stuff. Focus. Life always has to come before the game, and it's a hobby. You come there to play the game, to have fun and relax. It's not Escape from Tarkov or Dark Souls. You're not there to get just punched in the dick every 10 minutes. It's ultimately to have fun.
When you're a player in Only War, it kind of is that, though. You kind of are there to get punched in the dick.
That depends on what type of war campaign you're running. Like,
yeah.
if you have players who are like, okay, we want to be fucking Scolinia Progenium, and we want to be elite, then you let them be elite. But if you have players who are like, fuck it, bro, throw me down in the Necromunda hives.
Well,
light me on
right
fire.
Legion, so
show me the Gene Stealer cults.
Give me doomed. That's what I want. That's what I want my regiment to be.
But yeah, it's definitely, I would say, if you're just not liking it, if there's a problem player that you just maybe, because I have seen a lot of people where they have someone who kind of rages every time he misses a throw and he takes damage and stuff, very simple stuff he shouldn't get upset about, and he says he's having fun, but the GM can't really confront him because they're just not that kind of person. And it's like, hey, you should just take a break then. if you can't talk to the individual, you should just put it on hold, because if it starts stressing you out, that's not where you're going. But that also leads into my next question. So, like, as GMs, how do you handle like problem players? People who show up late, people who rage quit over the simplest things, and people who are just maybe just blatantly disrespectful. Alan, what's your thoughts? How do you handle stuff like that?
So I am very three strikes, if that makes sense. Like when I'm running a session 0, I like to. Session 0 really isn't a whole lot of like, okay, like you're in a tavern, spaceship or whatever. It's more like, all right,
Tavern on a
guys,
spaceship. All right.
fuck yeah,
I'm in.
Yeah,
Throw me
I'm
out to
in.
play.
yeah, I'm in. Like session 0 for me is more like, okay, let me see your character sheet. All right, this is cool. Is this what you want? Have you considered this? Awesome. Here are my expectations. And then I lay out like, hey guys, so I have high hopes for everybody, and I really appreciate you all coming out for my game. But here are some things that I don't break. Like these are like core rules to me. And if you break one of these 3 or more times, like I'm gonna politely but firmly ask you to leave the table. And it takes a lot because like it's a very awkward situation, especially for in-person games. But there are times when somebody is simply being too much of an issue where you need to remove them because they are corrupting the very essence of the game, which is have fun.
Yeah, totally agree. And so George, what have you had a problem play? Like, what's your thoughts on it? Have you had a problem player you've had to deal with, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I had one problem player. It was when I was still doing in-person games, in there forever ago. It was a buddy of mine. He would show up to games, say he had fun, but he wasn't really there for the games. And ultimately, it was just a matter of like, I talked to him like, hey, you enjoying yourself? You having fun? Because you're not really paying attention. You gotta put down the phone. You know, and so you give the talk, and eventually the behaviors change or they don't. Actions speak louder than words, and then you make the decision from there. Ended up mostly just not inviting him to the games because he didn't his behavior didn't change. He just wasn't there for most of the games.
Yeah.
And that's no fun for everyone when everyone's involved and he's like, hey, it's your turn in combat, and he has to put his phone down. But and, problem players, they suck because it puts you in an awkward position having to confront someone. Nobody likes doing that. It puts the group in an awkward position because the group's not dumb. They're like, well, this is a problem. And then that puts you in an even more awkward position because the group's like, hey, you gonna handle this?
Yeah. So So do you feel more like? Do you feel like you have to jump on it quicker if another player brings it to you, or
um,
do you take them both? Like, whether you notice it or a player comes to you and tells you, do you just take it the same amount of seriousness?
yeah. If a player comes to you and says, hey, this is a problem because XYZ, that's like, okay, well, this is a problem because it's a problem for one of the players. I'm not gonna dismiss a person's problems just because I may not personally find it. Like, if I have a group of players and one of them, we're having fun. One of them comes up to me at the end of the session and say, "I don't like how people curse so much." I'm not gonna be like, "Shut the fuck up, asshole." And be like, "Okay, I'll do my best to make sure people don't curse."
That was aggressive.
Yeah, my word.
Oh my.
I wasn't ready
You
for
know,
that.
it's like you don't brush people off even if you have no problems with the thing that they have problems with. It's up to you to make a space where everyone is having fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so Lucis, same thing. Have you had problem players you've had to deal with, and how you deal with that?
So, based on the last two responses, I guess I'm kind of an asshole.
He sets them on
'Cause
fire.
I have no problem whatsoever with like if like there's a serious problem between like two players or like like for example like you said somebody's like on their phone not paying attention like back to back during sessions stuff like that like I'm not gonna be like aggressive about it but like I'm gonna confront you like I'm gonna tell you like hey like what's going on like why are you not paying attention? Is something happening in real life or whatever that's bothering you? But like, if that's the case, I do, especially in person, like when I do in-person sessions, I put in quite a bit of effort. Like I make terrain and everything. Like I put in quite a bit of effort. So like I'd appreciate
over here.
Yeah, I know.
Terrain and shit.
He painted a
Your
shoebox.
salary, bro.
yeah, I painted a shoebox like a castle.
I use
Like with battle maps
books.
Yeah,
But,
stick with battle maps and wet markers like the rest of us.
But like, if I'm gonna put in that amount of effort, like the bare minimum, like I kind of like expect a little bit of like respect back, of like, hey, just give me like a couple hours of your time, and if you're not enjoying it, like that's cool. Like I'm not gonna hate you for it or anything. I'm just gonna tell you like, all right, well then you should probably step away from the table. Like I guess you could say like I'm more concerned with like everybody being happy with the game. Like I guess I go like the fucking communist route, like full blown style, and like I'm not afraid to take you out back and fucking do what I got to do.
Death is a preferable alternative to communism.
Everyone is happy in this comrade, or you will be removed.
Exactly.
Are you happy? No. Follow me.
And I mean, see, because it's like whether you're aware of it or not, it just always leads back to that golden rule, man. It's like you're looking out for your other players, and that player, like if you're not having fun, you gotta go because you're just don't do that to yourself.
Drag everybody else's time down.
Yeah, and
I think what people fail to understand is like there's no shortage of players. There's never a shortage of players.
Yeah.
See, well, I don't like that mentality. So like I have seen that from a GM and a player's perspective. Is I don't like that mentality of like, oh well, there's just another player. It's like no, it's like if you're kicking out a player, it's because it's not working. It's like don't let it be just like I'm gonna kick you out because you're I don't like the sound of your voice or something weird like that, and then it's like because there's plenty of players. I've seen GMs like that who they literally the second someone is like kind of just discussing stuff with them, they're just like, there's plenty of players, you can just get out of here. And he's like, I was like, he's just talking about his equipment and how he would prefer something to be this way instead of another way, and he's like, well, that's not how I do it. Like, all right, fair enough.
I like to call those kinds of DMs like the Chinese fire drill DM. Like they just like to fucking toss everybody around all the time.
Yeah. Like I'd rather run a game, not a revolving.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some people that are they're set in a way. They like doing stuff a certain way, and they've done it that way for years. I've got no problem with those kinds of people. That's fine, as long as you're doing the appropriate thing and letting people know out the get-go. Like if you're posting ads looking for players, or if you're talking to people, let them know. Like, hey, I do this way, and that's it. Or if you're one of those like, it's rules as written, and it's like, but they misspelled cat. Rules as written. That's it. It's like, just tell me up front. That's all I want to know. I don't want to be surprised all of a sudden when it's like, yeah, I don't run weapons that way. They don't actually fire. It's like, what? It's just how I do it. It's like, all right, man. I guess I'll beat him to death with my bolter. I don't know.
Yeah, just fucking muzzle punch to the jaw.
Yeah, just no idea. But there is like some things like players that have never been GMs. There's this thing I noticed where they don't. Some of them, and it's definitely not a majority. It's not all of them, but there's some, because like most people are pretty nice, pretty genuine. But there are some who with the GM stuff, what they make, what they do for your character to have like plot points and special equipment and stuff, they don't think about the time and effort you put into that, and how when you present something to the party, like, hey, here's this plot twist, is it cool? It's like on the same level of your kid walking up with like a macaroni art, and if you're not like saying like, hey, that's pretty cool, bud, or like if they don't enjoy it, it sometimes feels like they crushed up that artwork in front of my face. It's like if you've been planning on a plot hook for like 3 months, and then they get there and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, and that's it.
I asked for Picasso. This is Rembrandt.
That's like, ah. But yeah, so yeah, that's pretty good, man. There's definitely everybody's on the same page except I think Lucis just wants to murder anyone who strays
Yeah.
from the line.
Dude fucking pulls out a bat out of his DM bag, like he's trying to fuck around and find out.
Look, you're either in the party or you're not.
That's true. Hey man,
Jesus.
he just speeds up the process, and I
That's
can't
some
hate
real
him
great leap forward shit right there, dude.
because you're still above. Like the lowest I would think is probably the person who they don't say anything, they just kick the person and block them or something.
Oh no! Like I'm not kicking anybody for no reason. Like I've only actually had to kick out one person. Like I've had to have conversation with people, but I've only had to actually kick out one person, and it's because they just were on their phone constantly and like just didn't give a fuck. And I was like, why are you here?
Yeah, and that's important. It's important to make the distinction between being an asshole and being a douchebag. It's okay to be an asshole sometimes. It's never okay to be a douchebag.
That's right. So all right, so like my next one is just leading more into the players' aspect of it. So in your game, do you let them know from the get-go, or like how do you handle this? Like will RP always beat it out? How do you handle PvP if it comes up? So I'll jump to Alan with that. Like, if like I'll give two blatant moments. Like if there's a player who just wants to attack another player, like he just wants to, or if there's a moment where in RP these two individuals get in a heated conversation and it comes to blows. How do you handle PvP like that?
Yeah. So, as always, I'm never gonna encourage my players to beat the shit out of each other, but like if it happens in character, it happens. The first thing for me with PvP is you got to be really attentive to like how the actual player is reacting, because at that point it's a very thin line between attacking the player character with your words and attacking the player with your words. So like when something like that comes up, you got to start like really keeping your head on a swivel to make sure nobody's going after like Jimmy and not fucking Zythron the Great or whatever.
Yeah.
As for the actual like going to blows with one another, I always run my combat with like limited dice rolls, like as much as possible. So like for example, if I have if I'm running Death Watch and I have my Space Marines and they're going up against fucking mooks from the local rebellion PDF force, like if you hit the body, you kill him. It's a fucking bolter. You kill him. He's a normal human being. We're going on to the next guy. But when it comes to players like that, those numbers can mean a lot. So I always let them roll their dice out. I leave it to chance and their skills and whatever they do. And I try to keep individual players down to about a minute and a half for their respective turns just to make combat go faster. But other than that, I leave it to the numbers, man. I don't pick a side. Fucking, you guys want to hit each other? You can do it. Just don't hit the other player.
It's like just don't miss and hit someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, George, how
I
do you
agree with that.
It?
I have actually had in-game PvP happen. The first time was because one of the players was mind controlled, and it happened. One player killed another player. Everyone had a good time. Everyone laughed it off. And the very next session, the player who had to make a new character at the end of the session tried to turn on the party and give them up to the bad guy. And then he was tried and executed by the party. So he lost 2 characters in 2 sessions. And
fucking phenomenal.
Everyone had a great time. Even the guy who had to make 2 characters in 2 sessions, he was like, "This was great. I loved both of these sessions."
Oh Lord, he probably cried later, but I mean,
yeah, like if it happens organically in character, it happens organically. I'm not going to stop an in character,
But will you stop their deaths though?
Absolutely not. I am not I'm a consequences of actions sort of DM.
So
if you make an action and it leads to death, well, you should have probably thought about it.
So if
if
if the characters get in a heated discussion and they come to blows, and then one of them knocks the other one out, and then he just wants to kill that guy, you'll let him, and I guess at that point you would hope the party nearby would stop him.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like,
Fucking-
listen, I'm not there to be a babysitter. I'm there to be a storyteller, and I'm there to facilitate the
that's
players telling their story.
yeah, that's fair. Because I mean, bar fights happen, and sometimes you fall and there's a chair, and you $1 million baby yourself. It just happens.
You $1 million baby.
that damn stool.
Yeah,
but,
appreciate it.
But fortunately, I haven't had anybody actually get butthurt about losing character or in character PvP interactions or heated interactions. No one has attacked the player themselves. And I try and keep on top of that. I generally DM for people that I know personally or that I think are good RPers who can separate that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had to deal with that.
And Lucis, so like, where are you at with that?
I guess I pretty much just agree with most of the stuff Alan and George said. The only thing I can really say that might be any kind of difference is like, if people are gonna PvP, like they're actually just gonna like go at it. I try to like pull out a character real quick and like kind of lay some ground rules. Like, are you trying to kill each other? If not, I'll like facilitate the combat where like even if you drop somebody to 0 hit points, that doesn't mean they're dead or like like dying on the ground currently. But if they are trying to kill each other, yeah, like go at it. Like I'll start a betting pool. Like I don't care. Like I'm here to, like George said, I'm here to facilitate. Like I'm not here to fucking arbitrarily go like, oh no, your characters can't fight one another. Like that's your choice, not mine.
But I would like to point out that I have seen games on Roll20 and other things where DMs will specifically say no PvP allowed, no interparty conflict.
Yeah.
And
I don't like that.
I think that's a respectable sort of ground rule to lay, especially when you're doing it on Roll20 and you don't know the people that are going to be players and you can't trust them to not be edgy McEdgelord.
Oh yeah, You
Yeah.
get fucking Darth Blade McGee with like 8 dead parents.
Shadow. Darth
Yeah.
Blade McShadow Stabber.
Yeah, it's like you never know, especially like I've seen a lot of games on Reddit looking for players, especially because COVID came out and like everybody went in, and you
Because
never
everybody's
know.
a hermit right now.
Yeah, and
I
you
was a
never
hermit
know.
before COVID.
Oof. Yeah, you're popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's you never know who you're gonna attract, and you bring in these type of people, and they just operate on a different level than everybody else, and like inherently, as a player at their core, like they become counterproductive to the fun of the party, and at that point, it goes back to the second question of like, how do you handle players?
Yeah. And I think the best way to handle problem players is to lay down as many ground rules as you need to prevent the problem player from cropping up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
especially before they start
PvP and problem players are
Yeah.
hand in hand most of the time.
Oh,
yeah,
without
most
a
of the time.
like I've been in a situation. So I was playing a Yuan T 5e, obviously. Yuan T war cleric of like Aztec origin. I don't know why, I just really thought it'd be cool. And in this setting, the DM had basically holocaust all the Yuan T, and it was the dragon. Oh, what the fuck are they? Dragonborn killed him, but there was a dragonborn in the party, so we were constantly butting heads, and eventually it came to the point where there was some like fucking dragon larvae motherfucker like attacked the party in an ancient sand crypt, and like I was killing this mother, but the other guy who was a monk was like, "No, you're not. That's one of my venerable ancestors," and I was like, "Yes, the fuck I." We went to blows over it. And, we got pulled apart by the rest of the party, but it was a really good moment for like character development, because later on in the story, we had to be like, you know what, like fuck you, and the other guy was like, eat shit and die, but we're gonna work together to solve this problem. So I think PvP when done by players who are in the right mindset, can lead to some amazing player written story, as opposed to just like, fuck this guy, I rolled a nat 20.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I actually have a similar story where one of our friends wanted to DM for the first time, and we hadn't figured out that large groups are bad, so it was in a large group. And there was 3 paladins and like 8 people, and no one talked to each other about their classes. So there was a paladin. I was playing a paladin of tyranny in D&D 3.5, which is a lawful evil paladin.
Mm.
And I think there was a paladin of freedom, and one of the obviously the normal paladin, the lawful good paladin, and me being lawful evil paladin didn't get along. In fact, we were before the game. We were I was trying to take over the island he was defending. But when the universe is in trouble, you get strange bedfellows.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where we were having a discussion and gently ribbing at each other until the insults got a little deeper and then a little deeper, and then me and him were looking at each other like we were staring each other down, um, and it got quiet, and the rest of everyone in the group was like, everyone came out of character and like, guys, you okay? And then like we instantly dropped character and looked at each other and went, yeah, what's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. Like you really get like so immersed in your character, you're just like feeling the animosity pool in, and you're just like in that moment. Like
Yeah, it was
that's
great.
some of the best memories you can bring.
Yeah, it was super fun. Everyone else had no idea what was going on. They thought me and him were about to come to blows right in the room. But as soon as they like, hey, is everything okay? We both dropped character and we're like, not like, obviously because it was in character, nothing happened.
So I got a comment here from Inquisitorial Archive. So he was saying that his first Black Crusade campaign had a bit of a Cold War situation between 2 PCs with the most infamy. So it never came to blows, but they were setting up basically just in case. And the Nurgle aligned heretic was loading all the air vents around the Equinarium with poisons, planning to sit out any fight in a haze of death. Said the Cold War never got hot, but it did end with one of them turning into a chaos spawn.
Yeah, I love Black Crusade.
Yeah, as Black Crusade does, bro.
Yeah. When you get a
Yeah.
bunch of megalomaniacal assholes in a room together, they're gonna they're gonna be assholes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
sounds like my kind of game.
my
Black
my
Crusade
thing
riot.
with PvP is, yeah, I mean, with a lot of stuff, to be honest, it boils down to just, you know, just RP. If it fits RP, I'm pretty much good. I'm like, you know what? If it's RP that you guys would punch each other, that's fine. But it's one thing if you got a Space Wolf challenging an Ultramarine for right of leadership for a squad, and then the Space Wolf being like, "All right, I'm gonna rip his head off," and it's like, hey, he's still a comrade. I was like, and you're in the Death Watch. I don't think you would have done that. So it's like, there's certain spots, certain things I'll let them do, but I always know where to pull the reins, especially if it's like just completely against their character. Someone who's like, oh, my character is a pacifist and he could never harm anyone. Like, I'm gonna punch this dude in the face because he didn't give me that loot item. It's like, I thought you were a pacifist or something.
Yeah, like
Are you a pacifist or are you an asshole?
I'm a pacifist through your face. Oh, got it. All right, that explains why you weren't a monk. All right.
Yeah. My favorite question to people who do things that are really out of character and like dumb or detrimental is, are you an asshole? Because
And
then
why?
they have to stop to think about it. Like, I don't know, am I an asshole? Because
I mean, if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably
Probably a
not fucking
duck.
goose. Yeah,
Or a zebra.
Yeah.
All right.
oh,
So
hold on.
my next one. So the next one I have for you. So we were talking about, PvP. Essentially, you guys were, boiling down to essentially, if it makes sense, RP. Have at it. So with that in mind, if something doesn't make sense in RP sense, like if you're like D&D 40k, whatever it is, if you're spending XP in between sessions. So like, you have one session, we just finished a big fight. And the next session starts with them walking 15 feet out of the hallway, and then they're right back where they are. Spending XP in between that gap and learning new skills or gaining new equipment or whatever. Do you feel driven to make that make sense RP, or is that just a meta of the game that's just kind of overlooked and it happens? Start with Alan. What you think, man?
So I would say, like, if you're in a position where you got players who are picking up combat skills, you can write it off as like, okay, like Visalia Aquamar, like in a moment of clarity, she masterfully like took her power sword and in one foul swoop came down on the wrist of her, battered the flat of her blade against it, and then slashed clean through the blade, completely disarming him. Like you can write off shit like that, but if you got a player who's buying like fucking
Well,
like
a more specific example. So Lucis is in my only war campaign. He picked up Melt-A-Gun training.
Mm.
So with that in mind, some GMs would be like, boom, Melt-A-Gun training. You can now use a Melt-A-Gun. In ours, we had a 2-week jump in game. So he had time to train with a tech priest to learn it. So it was explained in RP. If you don't have that time jump, if it's not explained in RP, do you allow that? Or as a GM, does that make you uncomfortable and you want the RP explanation?
In my mind, I'm gonna have to say that like limiting what players can buy and purchase based off of what you can explain through play is I don't like it because I want my players to flow free. Like I want them to develop into whatever they want. If you're playing Black Crusade and you want to be a fucking dual lightning claw wielding whirlwind of fucking death, like go crazy. Like do whatever the fuck you want. I'm not gonna stop you from doing that. So I wouldn't say that I would ever limit a player from purchasing something from with experience points based off of what I can write off as role play.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I generally agree. Like if a player levels up, I don't do XP. I'm allergic to bookkeeping. The less bookkeeping I do, the better. So everything I do is all milestone. So whenever I feel that the players have leveled up or gained experience, they gain experience. The uh the only time I've ever had my players wait and train a skill is in the RPG Traveler. Have you ever played Traveler?
I've seen stuff for it. I haven't dabbled in it myself, though. No.
It's the most banal sci-fi RPG you could ever think about. Like y- most games start with players getting a mortgage for a ship and paying off a mortgage.
Yeah.
Dude, if I wanted to role play being poor, I would just continue to live my normal life.
Yeah,
What the
it's
fuck?
like
Yeah.
it's super banal for no reason. But in order to gain new skills, you use the time between the weeks that it takes to jump from one system to the next to train skills. And the more skills you have, the longer it takes to train up new ones. And that's just written into the rules. There's no leveling up in Traveler, and oh wow, it was real boring. Kind of sucked.
And so Lucis, what's your thoughts on it? Like, how do you handle it?
So usually like I would like if my characters had like some kind of like roadmap as to where they wanted their character to like lead in like development. So that way they could kind of like RP. Like for example, if they're trying to learn some kind of bookish skill, maybe like as they travel and like do rests and stuff like that, like they're reading up and like researching things, or like they'll buy a book or something here or there at like some kind of store. If not, I mean, I'm not gonna like sit there and punish you because like you're not RPing out like developing your skills. Like you're still gonna get the same thing as everyone else. But I also like to reward people for their role play. So like maybe that guy is gonna, have a little more opportunity here or there because he's, getting into it a lot more than you are. But I mean, other than that, like
Yeah.
It's pretty much the only difference I have with any of you guys. I'm definitely not going to sit there and punish you because like you're not sitting in like I did in the only war game, like going out of my way to like go find a melt-a-gun and say I'm practicing with it. Like you got the XP just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
That-
that situation, I would just say, he already knew how to use a melting gun. He just didn't tell anybody.
Yeah. See, for me, it's very RP driven. All my campaigns are very RP driven. It's like I want it to make sense, and in some areas this makes the game easier. In some, it makes it a little bit more harder, or you have to play it a little bit more. It's like
This
major,
does-
major things for your character, like learning new training and stuff like that. In those moments, like most players don't really spend XP in between combats. And to be honest, I don't award a lot of XP in between combats for that reason, because I want the mentality of, all right, I'm on a planet, I'm in a mission, I'm not safe until I get back to my home base. It's like this Mass Effect 2 thought style of, or like 90s shows like Stargate and Farscape. Like, you go out, you do stuff, and every week you come back to the safe place and you're good. And I want that mentality of like, all right, we're back at base. I'm going to spend some XP. We're going to have a little time skip, and then we're going to get back at it. And it's like, I like that mindset, because when they're down there, they're focusing on one thing. It's like completing the mission. They're not worried about like getting the next thing immediately. They're just worried about fighting with their teammates and stuff. And I feel like I've driven that pretty well across with Lucis and the players in this current campaign.
Yeah, that does bring me to one thing. So, and you brought this up, Lucius, with your bookish skill. So, for anybody who's not familiar, I'm sure many of you are. There's 3 types of lores in pretty much all of the 40k role playing systems. There's common lore, which is basically the shit you can pick up just by existing. You hear it, you do it, so on and so forth. There's scholastic lore, which is the shit you read about it. And then there's forbidden lore, which is explicitly listed as shit people would kill you for knowing. Which, I mean, not a lot in 40k, but you know. When it comes to my forbidden lore, my players absolutely have to have a that. Like, if my players don't have a reason for knowing forbidden lore, then why would they have it? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Like-
that's something, like, there are definitely skills that some systems, like the 40k systems with the forbidden lore, have skills that like D&D doesn't have. You can get any skill in D&D, basically without much RP. You just become proficient in it. You've fallen off enough cliffs and tried to climb enough trees, you're proficient in athletics eventually. But like some systems have more RP heavy skills, like forbidden lore, where it doesn't make sense to not have an RP reason why you would have the skill become proficient in it. And I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind, especially when like there's 2 kinds of ways to run a game. Like Gordo was saying, he basically runs Monster of the Week style games, where after every mission, which may be 1-2 sessions, you go back to base, you have a time skip, you go on your next mission. Where I generally run sort of like almost like anime season, like Dragon Ball kind of shows in my games, where my players have a goal and they just keep going until they get to that goal, and then they decide their next goal from there, and they just keep going until they're done with that goal. And so there's really no time for them to go back to base, or they may not even have a base to begin with. And so it makes it much harder to role play getting every skill and every combat ability, which is why I think if anyone watches a lot of anime, especially shonen, some characters, they just sort of like have new attacks, new skills all of a sudden. It's like, oh, where did that come from? It's like, I learned it in this moment, in this awful fight.
That's why animes don't, like, a lot like Dragon Ball Z, they don't blatantly. There are some moments where they're like, yeah, there's been a time skip, but for the get-go, they don't really blatantly just be like, yeah, it's been like 4 months since the last time you saw him. They just keep it unknown. It's like you don't know how long he's been doing his shit. Like, I mean,
I feel like
when it comes to the sorry,
oh, you're good.
when it comes to the like when you said like D&D doesn't really have a skill for like like you need to like study up on that. The only one that I ever do that with in D&D is Arcana. That's it. Like
yeah.
like if you're not studying specifically to learn about magic and how it functions, like I don't think you should have that skill unless you already had it.
But here's a counterpoint I would give to you. I think that Arcana isn't the knowledge necessarily a knowledge about magic, because sorcerers don't need to
Hey,
study
what's
for their
up?
magic. It's just all feeling to them. So if you're proficient in Arcana but
Can
not
it wait for a
knowledgeable
second? I
about
have like
magic,
9
it could
minutes
just be
left on
your
my
gut
podcast.
feelings on, this feels
thanks.
like
Sorry.
weird magics. This feels like destruction-y magics. And so, like, in specifically Death Watch and the Fantasy Flight 40k games, Forbidden Lore is a very specific thing. This is stuff that nobody should know, except if you're in Black Crusade, then everyone knows that shit. But in D&D,
Whoa.
like, you could fluff Arcana to be like, this wizard knows about magic, while this guy, he's just kind of feels it out. He wiggles his big toe, he gets an itch on the back of his hand, he knows it's evocation.
Yeah, I could definitely see how you could like fluff it around that way and stuff like that. But I like when it comes to the skills, I usually try and stick into the actual like specific description from the book, just so like it helps me like kind of like focus in on like exactly what that's used for. And then like anything that kind of falls outside of that stuff, I kind of just like attribute to certain skills as they make sense. But like for example, with like Arcana, it says like it's specifically recalling lore about that kind of stuff. That's why like I always thought of it more of like a bookish kind of thing of like, oh, I've studied for a long time and like yeah, I see the way you're moving your hands and the words you're using, so I know what spell this is or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm going to preface this way. I think that's a completely valid interpretation. But I'm the kind of GM who I look at the rules as they're written and not necessarily the fluff around those rules, because I don't really care what the system thinks it should be. I only care about what its effects are, and then I'll figure out how those effects manifest when they happen.
Yeah, but
And
the fluff makes the system. What's the difference between a fucking 5th level wizard, casting fireball and a fucking beta level psyker, casting fucking sunbeam? Like it's the difference. The fireball wizard fucking does the magical hand signs, says the fucking stupid elven words, and then boom, this giant ball of fire appears and encompasses a giant sphere and everything. The psyker, thematically, obviously, effectively, it's the same thing, but thematically, the psyker has to literally call upon the powers of what you could call hell if you lacked an imagination and risk straight up demon possession just to
Well,
call forth this giant ball of living purple hellfire.
well, I
But
feel like with this, so I feel like yeah, because this all this stuff it really is just personal interpretation, and I feel all of this like with the RP and using that to control when people get upgrades and spend XP and stuff, all of that and how you handle it is just tying into how like your storytelling. Some people use music as a background mood setter. Some people use vast descriptions. Some people use RP because I feel like with some players and some players don't care, they just don't care. But some, I feel like the meta of like, yeah, you spend XP, boom, you now have this thing. I feel like that pulls them out of the immersion for a second. Like they're not as in it, for that moment because which is why I normally want to focus that at the end of a session or have them spend their XP in between sessions. It's like, hey, there's going to be a 2-week time skip, so go ahead and do your XP. So then when they get back for that session, they have that stuff. We start bringing them back in and start immersing them. It's to keep the attention and everything of those players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that as well. It's very concise.
Yeah, it's all about a matter of knowing the group, knowing your players. And I don't run my games like that, but I'm not going to stop my players from RPing that anyway. And I definitely have players who very much like, this is my new level, this
Sorry,
is
but
my
I'm
new
like,
skill,
I
this
got
is
like
how I
4
got my new
minutes left.
skill. It's like, great, good on you. I'm not gonna
No.
downplay that. I'm
Hold on.
not gonna just say like I'm not gonna remind them that I don't care, that they just have the skill, because that would take away their fun.
Nah, just follow Communist Lucis. Just beat them.
Yeah, just take them out back.
Just beat
Fucking
them.
beat him to death, bro.
All right.
Hey man, you want to see my new 9mm?
We got about 4 minutes left, but I want to get into the next question, kind of specifically because I want to hear. So, like as a GM, how do you feel? Like, do you feel it's necessary to sit down with those players and talk about them, like what they want to see in the game? Like, if they want, hey, I want a chase scene. Hey, I want to have a scene where we're driving cars and I got to jump from one, giving you not only like, hey, I'm making a character with this backstory, but also like moments they want to see or storylines they want to live. Or are you a GM who's coming there because you yourself want to express and live in a specific setting or a specific campaign? I'm going to go with Alan, as I've been doing. You go first, my friend.
Thank you, amigo. I'm gonna have to say, so you are the GM, right? The players exist to enjoy your story, right? Obviously, you want to make your story enjoyable, but at the end of the day, if a player comes to you and is like, "Hey, I want to have a chase scene, or I'm getting chased by demonic Santa Claus," if that makes sense within your story, incorporate it. But if you're fucking, you know, like just if it's just like out of the blue, it's like, dude, like what the fuck? Like I can't justify it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to say that, if a player comes to you and is like, hey, that was super fun. Could we do more of that? You can remember that. And obviously, you can branch out and bounce stuff off of other GMs to try and get new ideas to see if your players enjoy them or don't enjoy them, which is just as important. But at the end of the day, to me, like you're the GM. You are above God for all intensive purposes. That is your story and you make it.
Well, so
And what
a
the players
follow up
enjoy.
with that, when you go looking for players or you go setting up a campaign, do you feel obligated to talk to the players first, or do you pitch your idea first? Like, if you go, are you like, all right, I specifically want to do an Arbitus, campaign because I want to feel like Judge Dredd in 40K and I want to run that? Or do you go to them and say, hey, guys, I kind of want to do this Arbitus thing. I got, 40K Judge Dredd. Or what do you guys want to do? Like, which way do you normally approach them?
So normally I'm gonna have to go with the latter because I'm gonna bring my idea to the table because it's my idea and it's what's gonna attract people in the first place. But if they're like, hey, yeah, I want to do that Arbites thing, but can we do it on like a penal colony as opposed to a hive world? And then all of a sudden that opens up new branches. And I think multiple people are integral to the creative process. And as a GM, I reserve the right to be like, no, that's not allowed. So I'm perfectly fine listening to my players. And if they don't like it, then they don't like it. I'm going to be like, hey, thanks. I guess this isn't the game for you.
I gotcha. And George, what's your thoughts on that?
My experience with it is that I tend to have people come to say, "Hey, I haven't played D&D in a while. I'm playing D&D," and I go, "Okay, what do you want to run?" And they say, "I want to play D&D." I go, "Thanks, very helpful." But I always have a bunch of homebrew settings in both fantasy and sci-fi ready. So I'll be like, "Okay, well, this is a setting. Here's a setting document. Go read it up, make a character." But I'm the kind of GM who doesn't really make a story. I'll make like 3 or 4 hooks in the world, drop the players in, expecting them to have characters with backgrounds and motivations, and they want to do things, and then say, okay, here are you, here's the world, here's a couple of fish hooks to grab onto, and then I let them do whatever they want.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's valid. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it. Lucis, Commissar Lucis, how do you break and bend your players into shape in your perfect world?
That would be
people to
comrade general.
Comrade, I'm sorry.
General Secretary, how are you doing?
So, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, like I'm there to have fun too. So when it comes to that, I like to make my own story, my own world. I'm definitely, I'm looking to turn things in certain directions to make sure other people enjoy themselves. Because like, if I wasn't there to make sure the players were having fun, like I'd be a really shit DM. But I think my enjoyment of giving that story to other people and getting enjoyment out of them having fun also comes from my ability to be able to create my own world and do what I believe should be done in it, but also for their own enjoyment as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to um, keep in mind, because the players, if they knew what was coming, that would rob it of a lot of the drama and suspense and excitement of a thing. So if somebody says, "I want to have a chase scene," and you're like, "Okay, sure, there'll be a chase scene," and then you give them a chase scene, I mean, yeah, they'll be like, "Okay, that was cool," but if your players come to you and say, "I want to have a chase scene," you go, "Oh, yeah."
I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest, throughout like all my experience, a lot of the times the players don't really know what they want.
Yeah, I've never had a
Yeah.
player come up to me and say, "I want to this scene," and
Yeah, I can understand
most,
that.
yeah, most of the time, like I've given chase scenes, I've given skill challenges.
Now saying that, like I'm definitely open to feedback. Like if they come up to me and they're like, "Look, that wasn't fun at all," I'm like, "Okay, that's probably never going to happen ever again in any form or fashion." Like,
Yeah, yeah, I
Yes,
agree.
yeah. I normally flow in between both. It's there are moments like like the Judge Dredd thing. Like I was like, I want to run a Judge Dredd game. That's it. Period. Point. I'm like yin or out. I let them know at the get go. It's like, hey, this is gonna be like Judge Dredd, and that's it. And then other moments, yeah, like some of my D&D games, I'm just like, I sat down with like 5 people, and I'm like, what do you guys want to do? They're like, we want a dragon to be the bad guy. I was like, is that really just that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm like, I got you. Like, yeah, it's like I'll fill it in, and it's like, yeah,
Easy.
other people just want certain moments. It's like I want to jump out of a Valkyrie. All right. I was like, it's like some people just it's like a bucket list. They're just like, I want to do this thing, and you're like, sure, okay.
That reminds me. I remember I ran this super lethal game of Only War. It was dudes were getting shot out. It was like boarding a space station outside of a planet. The whole game, one shot, took place in a space station, like 6 hours. A prerequisite to the game is you had to have 5 characters already rolled up before you could even join. And like all the players knew what was going to happen. Like, hey guys, I'm in a game that is literally specifically designed to be as grueling as possible. And they were all like, "Fuck yeah, sign me up." So
Well,
that's
you
what they wanted.
you
And
have a biased audience,
they
and
gave me.
they were already playing Only War.
I'm here to get fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that sounds great. That sounds like a fun time. Uh, but I definitely find that some players prefer some systems because some systems are much more lethal than others, like Only War. Some are catered to the power fantasy, like D&D, where everyone's a goddamn superhero. And then there's like actual superhero RPGs.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's some things you just have to, and it's like, all right, so there is that moment where you do have some players or even GMs, they want to take a system and warp it to what they want to play. Like, I want to be a superhero, or I want to be an anime edgelord, or I want to be, whatever.
I want to be Sasuke.
Shadowkin Bloodblade. I murdered my parents 8 times.
and people will want to bend it's like they only know a system, and sometimes they feel more comfortable bending it to their will as opposed to going and learning a new system. So it's like, I get that. It's like, for a while I wanted to scratch the itch of like a modern RPG. I hate the D20 modern. I hate D&D modern. They're just not for me. And I've like homebrewed stuff for Only War before, but it would take a lot of work to make it work. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, really shouldn't. But with those kinds of moments, it's like, it's like, you can suggest other things. It's like, dude, if you want to be One Punch Man, you're gonna have to. I mean, you can have a power fist. You'll be decently One Punch Man for like most things. Like, you'll be there.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to say for like homebrewing, because I'm not a big fantasy person, even though my main game is D&D, because all my players are big fantasy people. So if I want to roleplay in any sort of way, I sort of have to deal with it. But I eventually came up with a relatively balanced set of firearm homebrews for D&D 3.5, which I ported over to 5th edition. And it basically just reskins bows and crossbows into pistols and rifles and shit. And so I'm not changing 5th edition. I'm adding what is missing to make a compelling modern science fiction setting. Because I don't like D20 modern and the D20 future with all the firearms and stuff. Mm-hmm. They're horrifically unbalanced. I don't like them at all. And so I basically needed to scale down their power.
Yeah, that's the thing sometimes. So, in chat, we do have so Strong Plays. It was just talking about the adorable baby noises.
Yeah, that me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just threw it in there that if Lucis doesn't work out, the baby's gonna co-host with me. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the communism.
Gotta have that replacement.
I mean, who doesn't love adorable communism? We got Commissar. What was it? What'd you say, Comrade?
No,
what?
Comrade General.
What the fuck,
Comrade. God,
Lieutenant Commissar.
If you keep fucking this up, I'm gonna have to take you out back.
I'm gonna call
and
you.
Then I'll be the host.
Understood, Lieutenant Comrade. All right.
He has gone to the Gulag dungeon for eternity.
I'm gonna have to change my name now.
That's right.
In this Discord.
All right. So with that, it's 9:08. I think we're gonna call it there. A little bit over an hour, but I think we all had fun today. So, thanks, Alan, stopping by. Last Shadow
Always
G18. Yes, sir. George, aka the Strom. Thanks for stopping by.
Lucis, thanks for having me.
I mean, Lucis, you're Lucis. So I mean,
yeah, I'm just here, man.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, we'll get used to you. But but
one of these days.
Yeah, that was great. So we're gonna. I don't know. Ending things are really kind of. I'm just gonna push the button, I guess.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, like, subscribe, follow.
It was a pleasure. I enjoyed talking to everyone here, and obviously, I hope the listeners enjoyed hearing about.
I hope
what we
so
all
too.
Had to say.
Yeah, I could talk about RPGs forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got the next 2 coming in next week. I mean, I've got 2 different GMs for the next like 5 episodes. So next is Jordan and Ven. We're gonna see their perspectives on that. We're probably gonna ask them a few of the same questions and then bring in some new ones and stuff. But yeah, we'll probably get Alan and George. We'll probably get you guys back on. Probably sometime in December. But
it gives me time to move. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, if not, we'll definitely get you. You guys will be the first ones we DM if we got some people dropping out or something. But yeah, hopefully everybody has a listen. You guys just message anybody if you think they'd have fun checking it out. But I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream there.